Alright guys, and now I want to talk about weakness awareness. And knowing the weaknesses that your opponent has can help you both tactically and strategically. Tactically, it'll help you figure out the themes that you're going for, what weaknesses you should be attacking, and what is available for attack for that matter. Like if I look at this pawn on d5 right now, I don't think any tactics can evolve around this d5 square because it's so well protected, right? Now on the other hand, if I look at c7, if I look at b7, and I look at h7, all those pawns are susceptible to attack, right? I can get to them. Now, how is not a question. Like maybe I can get a queen to g3 followed by some bishop h6 and bishop takes c7 idea, for example. In this case, Black was oblivious to his own weaknesses. He wasn't even paying attention. He didn't care at all. He just said, you know what? Let me play a human move. Let me play something like rook e8. And he didn't know where his own weaknesses were. If he did know, then maybe he'd play something like pawn h6. Maybe he'd play something like pawn g6, covering the dark squares with his bishop in the future. But instead of that, he just said, you know what, let's just play natural moves. And when you're oblivious to your own weaknesses, then this will happen to you. Out of nowhere, White was paying attention, and out of nowhere, there are two weaknesses that come into fire, and both of them are too weak to defend, because you can't defend both at the same time. You can't play queen c8 and defend h7 at the same time. If you do defend h7, which you may want to do, then suddenly there's queen takes b7 and queen takes c7, pointing out that c7 is also a weakness as well as the knight, which is now undefended. If you defend rook b8, then okay, I'm just going to destroy your king side. In either case, White had very little in terms of weaknesses. White didn't have to worry about anything. c3 is very hard to get to. It'll be magical if Black can somehow get to it, and otherwise these pawns are all safe. Perhaps a better move would be something like pawn b6 for Black, trying to get rid of his own weakness and trying to create some for White. For example, if Black can get all these moves in something like b5 and then play rook c8, now he can say, oh, I did get to c3. But before that ever happens, I think White will still be happy to go for something like queen b1 and try to say that b6 is a weakness. Okay, so always be aware of both weak squares and weak pawns and weak pieces for that matter. And I have a few examples to show all three of these. Okay, in the next example, it was Carlsen himself who may not have seen the weak square in his position, as he's playing a French maneuver where the pawn chains leave behind holes. And these holes over here on d6 and f6 are important. And because they were ignored, Anish Giri managed to use them with a nice little tactic that's not easy to see. Let's see if you guys can find it. I'll give you 3 seconds. You can pause the video. Ready? White to play and use the weaknesses with weakness awareness. Alright, so if you guessed knight e4, you guessed correctly. Okay, it turns out that the knight wants to get to both f6 and d6, and those are both forking distances. And if you take, well, good luck defending this position when your coordination is all messed up for Black. The bishop here is going to be scary. Probably he's looking at something like bishop a3, or even something like f5, trying to blow open the center completely and open the f-file. So after, let's say, here, e6, and at least we opened up the dark squares and the bishop start firing. But maybe he wants to prepare that a little bit. The new weakness is still the dark squares, right? Because Black doesn't have a dark square bishop. So even something like bishop d4 looks scary because there are 2 pieces that are unprotected, right? So after bishop d4, I think Black is in trouble. Now, of course, you have to check that. You have to make sure there are no counterattacks and counter checks, such as, I don't know, queen to a5. And maybe they can be all right, but at least the dark squares is what I should be focusing on. Okay, dark squares will give me the strategical goals of the position. All right, now in this example, Black managed to escape unhurt because he has the nice little counter tactic. Rook takes c2. But the idea that we want to get to d6 and f6 should stay in your mind. It should almost hypnotize you. How to get to the weaknesses. It should always be at the back of your mind as you're playing moves such as trying to get rid of this pawn, let's say. Maybe we can play bishop g2 and get ready for some sort of f5, pawn takes, bishop takes, and eventually get our knight to f6 this way. Any plan you choose should have these two squares in mind. Okay, now let's take a look at the next example, also very nice. This is about pieces, and pieces that aren't well placed. So if you look at the rook, I mean, rooks don't make great blockaders, but at least it's safe. The king isn't very safe, but if he runs to b7, he will be safe. It looks like this knight is holding black's position together, and even if you get rid of this knight, which is the most tempting continuation, it's so tempting to go for that, right? It's still not so clear that we can win by chasing the king around, even though we have a great knight too. Now, if we are aware of black's weaknesses, this should not be hard at all. You guys will be able to figure this out in a heartbeat if you know that the queen is what we're focusing on and how to trap the queen. Alright? Once you know that the queen herself is the weakness, you start thinking, what would a queen trap possibly look like? So we say, the rook can't really trap the queen because the c4 pawn will fall. I need the b4 square protected, because even if my knight somehow does attack that queen, then the queen can run away to, let's say, b4. Even if my knight somehow gets to b7 or e6, the queen runs away. So I need to cover the b4 square, and that's important. I also need to get my knight to somewhere like either d3 or, for that matter, a6. Okay. Once we know that this is the weakness and we have it ingrained in our minds, then we can try to use it. And the best example to use it would be this little profound quiet move h3. And even though it looks really weird, like what are we wasting time for? It's actually a great waste of time, since it helps us bring the knight both to a6 and d3 through the use of b4. Once the knight gets there, it's game over. And the best part is, black can't really stop me, can he? Because I'm playing this no matter what. If he takes, I take back and I trap the queen anyways. I took away the b4 square, I enacted my queen trap. I set it in motion, okay? And even if they try really hard to save the queen, it's just gonna have a hard time getting out of here, okay? So here it's about knowing that the queen is weak. We should always have this in mind, okay? Now, in the last position I want to show, this was an example from one of my games, and we're going to flip. We're going to be black in this position. So I was playing and I was thinking, how can I use white's weaknesses and where are they? So in the Philidor, or this King's Indian Philidor hybrid, which we have on the board, black is looking at e4. Now the only question is, can we use it? b2 can potentially be weak because it's not protected, and e4 is coming under heavy pressure. Only question is how to attack it. The great thing is the bishop blocks the e file. So if white ever wants to defend the e pawn, it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy with this type of bishop in the way. And so that's why I just took right away. And if they take with the knight, the bishop stays blocking the e file, and we can use that by playing knight c5. Suddenly there is heavy pressure on e4, and our plan here, not our tactics. The tactics have nothing to do with this. There aren't any discovered attacks yet, not yet at least. No forks. We're just strategically focusing on this pawn. We're just saying all my pieces will attack this guy, and good luck defending it. And when you try to defend it in some weird way, let's say they go for some weird move like f3. First of all, you're hurting your pieces. Second of all, you're making new weaknesses such as g3 that I can try to use later on with my bishop and knight. But most importantly, you weaken another square, which is e3. So once I see that, in the back of my mind, it should be screaming out to me. It should be saying, how can you use the e3 square? How can you exploit it? And one of the ways is probably just d5 right away. It's just getting rid of my potential weakness on d6, creating a isolated pawn for them, if not just winning the pawn outright, right? And they're in big trouble. Even if they play something like bishop g5, I can probably just take once and then ask them a question about their bishop before this pin gets scary. And if they have to give up the bishop pair, then again, I'm happy. Their dark squares are all weak, and they have a permanent weakness on e4 in that isolated pawn. Okay, so then if they don't want to play f3, they have to give up the bishop pair with bishop g5. Because what else do you do? Do you play queen f3? No, that doesn't even work. Takes c4 anyways. It's really hard to to stop this pressure on e4, which we can still increase. Okay, so black got the bishop pair, and I was very happy the second he took on f6 because now it should be much better for black, if not winning. So first things first, let's develop. Let's make sure we have everything out. And around here, after I traded off the knight, he wasted some time just to trade off a piece. I'm okay with that. Now I can make use of the bishop pair, right? White chose the wrong plan, didn't really accomplish anything. Now, first things first, let's make sure we don't lose in space. And secondly, let's focus on their weaknesses, okay? So what are their weaknesses right now? One thing I didn't notice in the game was that c2 is a weakness, and the split on the knight and the pawn is important. So if you're a computer here, you play d5. And so my computer just screams out d5, going for d4. And even after they take, we have d4 coming in, and we're winning the pawn on c2, unless they play some sad moves. Now, notice that b2 is still a weakness, and now there is even a forking pattern here that my bishop is looking forward to. So let's use that as well. Notice that the queen is weak, so we can even use the queen's weak location to attack both at the same time. And there is another forking pattern that I'm happy to use on the knight and the rook. I hope they take my queen, right? They can't, so they have to run away. And we say, wait a second, let's go for c2 again, because now your knight is gone. We have a new weakness to attack, so we keep changing from this pawn to that pawn. We're going to keep changing. As they run back, I say, oh, more pressure. Let's pile up on that weakness because it's really hard to defend the pawn, right? Knight can go there, the rook can go there. As they try to go here, I say, okay, let's trade off the best defender. If all their pieces are bad except for one, you trade off that one guy. After you trade off the queen, then everything is easy. Queen takes e2, rook takes e2. And if they're brave enough to take my pawn, we go for more final tactics. d3. Now the tactics work because I was always aware of the b2 weakness. If you keep that weakness awareness in your mind, you will find tactics like this, which are not easy to spot. Like most people are just thinking, okay, rook c8, right, and put more pressure. But if you're aware of this pawn, then moves like d3 come naturally. In the game, I played something alright. I played an alright move because I knew this was a weakness, but I didn't use it the fastest way. I tried to take it easy, take it slowly, just improve my position and go for the b2 pawn. And I guess that's one way to attack the weakness, but definitely not the fastest way. Since we had the bishop pair, we wanted to open the position right away. Okay, so in the game, I also noticed that their dark squares are weak, and this pawn on g3 is not really protected because of the spin. Right? So I managed to use the spin and break up their pawn structure. Now they have more pawn islands, and all these pawns are weak, plus the king is weak, right? They try to defend, and somewhere around here comes the critical point where we have one more weakness to exploit. Try to find it if you can. 3, 2, 1. Okay, and so the answer is the back rank. The back rank is weak the second the knight goes here, right? And the second the queen goes away, we can use the back rank. So if you answer d5, you'll be totally right. We need to get our rook to the back rank so we can use it, and we can use the spin on the knight. And so the game finished after bishop takes, and queen takes d5, using the newly weakened light squares, as well as the back rank and the pin on the knight. And so black resigned. So keep the weaknesses at the back of your mind, both tactically and strategically, and that will help you a lot, as you saw here.